We are shows what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
Welcome to Shows What You Know and our discussion of the end of the world. Effing world, I suppose, is the way to say it. We're not afraid to say the fuck words on this show, but technically speaking, the comic is with the fuck words, and I'm overdoing it. Hello, we're here to talk about a show. It's a breakout hit, surprising everyone, blasting through Netflix, blasting right into our hearts, at least into mine, and I'm interested to see what about yours. My heart is Jacob Burrows.
And my heart is Jim Scampoli. And yes, we are discussing the end of the fucking world. See what I'm not afraid.
Wow.
Now I guess this show came out on the BBC Channel 4 or something or other a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have that correct? I don't know how true this is. When I glanced through some of the feedback, is that it wasn't like a breakout hit for the BBC.
No, that's what I'm thinking. It's got this rare second chance, or maybe it's not rare in today's day and age, but it really, I mean, I hadn't heard about it, and then all of a sudden it exploded because everyone is talking about it right now. Like the top recommended on our YouTube stream of this episode is like facts about the actors in the end of the fucking world. And that's the type of shit you see for Stranger Things. I don't think this has the lifespan of a show like Stranger Things, but it is kind of something that unexpectedly blew up in just the last couple of days where no one was talking about it, and I'm sure no one will be talking about it in a little while, unfortunately. But we're right there in the moment right now when it's the hottest thing. Every time I Google it, there's 5 new articles about it.
Yes, it did just recently premiere on Netflix worldwide, I assume. And yeah, it's what, 8 episodes? 8 episodes. I don't think any of them are more than 22 minutes. They're all like 19 to 21 minutes or something like that. It is a breeze of a watch. I should say up front that we're not going to discuss spoilers yet. So in case you haven't seen the show and you're just kind of seeing what our basic thoughts are on it, we will warn you before we get into any spoilers. But I will say it's for sure, it's a breeze of a watch. It's what, basically like a 3-hour movie kind of, all said and done.
That's got to be what it adds up to, right? I haven't done the actual math, but yes.
And IMDb describes it as James is 17, and it's pretty sure he's a psychopath. Alyssa, also 17, is the cool and moody new girl at school. The pair make a connection, and she persuades him to embark on a road trip in search of her real father.
Yeah.
What about a heartwarming little tale for you? I will say that I love the tone. I like me some dark comedy, and this show, I feel it does kind of run the line really well, where it almost can pass over into parody is not the right word, but like, just too like, whoa, dark. But I like how they handle everything in a really skilled way, I'd say. I'm not really familiar with the filmmakers behind this, but I love the look of the show. I love how they balance everything. I think it comes together really well.
It's got a really specific look and feel to it. We've got voiceover from both of our main characters talking about their lives and flashing to the past, and then it goes into like a 4:3 aspect resolution instead of the usual 16:9 when we're in the past, and it's kind of got this nostalgic tinted flair. And even just the first lines are like, I'm James, I'm 17 years old, and I'm pretty sure I'm a psychopath. And he talks about the animals he's killed, and they sort of bang onto the screen in it's a very specific style, right?
It reminds me, if we go inside a bit, I guess it's almost reminiscent of a Jacob Burrows YouTube video, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true now that you say about it.
Obviously darker, but I know you've put together some different videos, like, and collages of like your trips and pictures and stuff, and you lay stuff out on a table and they appear, and it's nice, and it's fast, like it gets the point across. So I would say that if you check out Awesomepedia on YouTube, it's exactly like that.
Thank you. Well, my name is Jacob. I am 27 years old, and I'm pretty sure I'm a psychopath. But that's neither here nor there. That's true. The specific shot of like from above at a table, things appearing, disappearing as you talk about them, and similar. Yes. Obviously, I like that stuff. But as you were saying as well, it's a comedy drama. That's probably our favorite genre. That rhymed and everything. You know, we talk about Mrs. Maisel a lot, but other shows that really balance as well. Also, I feel it's the perfect thing because when a show is just listed as a drama and it's really good, I can really enjoy it. But often it's the comedy dramas that are like managing to tickle both of my bones, my drama bone and my funny bone, I guess.
I agree. I really enjoy a comedy that's kind of not afraid to be real sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe real's not the right word. But like I guess to go to darker places, and not let that affect the comedy. I'm sure some people don't enjoy that. They want their comedies to be. This is going to sound pretentious, but they want their comedies to be Paul Blart Mall Cop or something like that. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like some people
They
just
want the comedy where they laugh at it. How droll. We don't like that. We like to cry at our comedy here.
yeah, they just want it to be, there's that, and I'm not saying anything wrong with it. There's that genre of comedy that's just straight slapstick. Like, here we go. Like, people are going to fall down. We're going to say some jokes. We're going to see a butt or two. And believe me, I love that comedy as well. But I enjoy, because I feel like there's more of a challenge there to balance comedy with, drama. Like you said, a nice, good old dramedy for
Yeah.
pretentious people. It's great
Is
that people couldn't come
yeah.
up with a better description than it's a dramedy, I guess.
Well, this one also it's a good word, pretentious, because it's got like you said, it's kind of like a movie. It's kind of like an indie movie. It's kind of like a dark young adult John Green, but a bit darker story where you have an edgy girl and an edgy guy, and they're outcasts from society, and they're gonna have deep conversations, and it'll be heartwarming at times, and then like frighteningly real at times. And they pull that off in a really good way. And I went into the show kind of blind because you just told me you said it's about a self-diagnosed psychopath who, well, this is not a spoiler because it is in like the first bit of the first episode, but he just kind of decides that this girl is his first victim. Like, that's how they get to know each other. That's where it starts. And while I advise you to go in pretty much blind, that does, if you have any sense of story structure, kind of tells you what's gonna happen in this show. Because in a way, just from hearing you say that, I assumed some like I was like, oh shit, I can't wait to see what happens, because I'm trying not to say any spoilers, and I won't. But it's like it's kind of what you expect, but in the best way.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way. I don't even want to get into way too many details before we do the spoilers, but yeah, it's a good show, and I think it deserves the recognition that it's now getting, and I think it's really nice that it got kind of a second chance, because often even just uploading things to the internet, you feel like you get one chance, man, and then
Yeah.
nobody watched that one, huh? Put a lot of hundreds of hours into that one, and not to speak ill of Channel 4, but it's kind of like the Awesomepedia YouTube of television channels, where you put it up there, but someone might not recognize it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think the way they did it, again, I apologize if I get some of the details wrong. I think they premiered like the first episode, and then they were like, okay, all the episodes are on our website, which it's a cool way to do it because this is kind of just like an episodic movie. So it is one of those I feel like is a bingeable show, but I don't know how much attention it ended up getting. So yeah, I agree. I think it's cool that it's getting this Netflix push and people are finding it. And I think it's a hard thing to pull off because it does balance. Not only does it balance the comedy and the drama, but it balances the angst. And it's very easy to fall into just the teenage angst, especially when you're like trying to make it kind of elevated with this whole is he a psychopath, is he a murderer thing. And I don't know, I just feel like they really pull it off. I could totally see someone looking at this show from the outside, whether seeing the trailer or a poster and hearing like a synopsis and being like, that's shit. But I recommend it. I think it's worth watching. It's a fast show. I think we talk all the time about length, and they made all the right choices in regards to that. Because this totally could just have been a movie, and it probably still would have been fine. It would have been fine as like an hour and a half movie or something like that. But I like that it's this like sitcom length show, but it keeps you wanting more. I feel like the episodes end, you're like, I want to watch the next one. I want to see where this goes. And I just think they made all the right choices. And I know we also talk about, or I talk about, that it's easy to say that everything looks good these days because, you know, some like Legion, everyone talked about the look of the show and how great it looked and like the photography or whatever. But I feel like this is a show that didn't really need to do that. And I feel like this is a beautiful show. I love the shots and the choices they make with the filmmaking, whether it be some of the stylistic choices like you were talking about, or just some of the simple, like, you know, there's like a beautiful shot of them walking through the woods with the, you know, the classic sundown shot as it's coming through the branches and stuff like that. A lot of things like that stood out to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it made me it really impressed me, and I look forward to future projects from these filmmakers.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. I think, well, we'll get into it in a little bit, probably in spoilers necessarily, but some people, or I think most people, are saying like, okay, that was great and it's done now. And then a lot of people think it's so great that they're clamoring for a season 2, and then everyone else is saying why that's not a good idea. And we will leave that discussion for later, but I wanted to mention it because I see it more as, wow, great people. I'm
Yeah.
impressed with all the people, like, on every level of this production, and I'm excited to see what they do next, rather than I'm excited to like hang out more with these characters.
Agreed. Like kind of like American Vandal in a way, like the feeling I got with how they put together that project and how it all came together, where I was like, I want to see more from these people, and not necessarily, even though they are doing American Vandal season 2, and I'm still excited for it. But either way, it could have been something else, and I would have been hyped for it.
Yeah, and apart from the specificity in the style of the writing and the choices, it's also, you were talking about the look, it's got a very specific look to it. Like in general, even when we're in the present, as it were, like sometimes it cuts to the past or whatever, and it does weird things with the aspect ratio and things like that. But in the present, it has a desaturated, most of the time, kind of look, and kind of a vintage look. So even though it takes place in modern day, starts with, you know, one of the characters smashing their phone and being proud to have smashed their phone, and the other one never had a phone. And that's not only convenient from a writing standpoint, it's also like, I don't know, it's got a feel that it's not like, if this movie was set in the 60s, it would look exactly the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like the kind of the tricks you do to make it seem like a period piece, they use it, but it does take place in present day, as far as the, like you said, the saturation or the photography and the look of the shots.
Which is great as far as balance. And when we're talking about the look, it's also kind of unavoidable to talk about the setting, because the setting is a huge part of it. There's kind of this road movie feel to it. And the road movie is through the south of England, not the most like, that's not where you go for a road trip, really. But the way they do it, they manage to turn it, and parts of it at least, into an almost mythic feeling place, like a weird, um it's like, I guess it's hard without talking about details, but the comic that it's based on does take place in the US. It's written by a guy from the US and drawn. And this, maybe it's because, you know, the Channel 4 is involved in everything, but it takes place in the UK. But somehow it just adds up to me really well, the environment that they're in, because they're talking a lot about how, you know, they're feeling stuck and trying to break out of where they are and find someplace different. And I don't know, all of that's part of it, and all of that is handled and put forward really well, I feel.
Yeah, well, that's because I didn't look into too much the graphic novel. I just double checked to see. I mean, we'll get into like the ending to see if it was like they ended at a certain point and there was more to it or not.
Hmm.
As far as if they like the talk of a season 2 or whatever. So I didn't realize. I just it's interesting because it's like I can't picture it and taking place anywhere else because it works so well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting tidbit to me.
Yeah, and about the comic as well, I did read it um, after watching this. So I
Mhm.
haven't, it's not like I'm a longtime fan and I'm upset about changes or anything, but I did read it and I was surprised, or maybe you listening, or if you've watched this, just Googling the comic, did you see any snippets of it?
I did not know.
It's not what I expected. It's not stick figures, but it's got a very simple style to it. It looks like the comics that I get at like this small like very small comics festival where all these like local makers make their own zines and things. It looks like a zine comic, and indeed it was published like kind of self-published by this guy as mini comics and then put together into a longer one. So it's very, the story is very similar with some distinct small little changes that we can talk about in the spoilers, but generally speaking, it's not the type of comic that I expect to be turned into a television show. And it's sort of in 2014 they apparently made a TV movie pilot, which was a short, I guess. I couldn't find a runtime on how long that was, but I guess that makes sense because it's very difficult to conceive going from there to just make, hey, yeah, let's make a whole TV show. Granted, Netflix tends to, green light whatever, but
Yeah.
um, but still, did you find any of it? Did you see?
I'm looking at it right now, and yeah, it does look like such a basic like web comic that you'd see. So yeah, it is really interesting looking at it after seeing the show because yeah, it's pretty bare bones, like especially as far as like blank backgrounds and kind of just a few characters talking. Well, actually, no, that's a spoiler. I don't want to say that. But yeah, no, I hadn't seen these before.
And the thing about that type of comic is I feel they handled this type of story really well, where it's some comedy but also bleak when it's kind of got that simplistic style, or it's like made by one guy who just kind of drew it on paper and then you read it. Because when I watched this, from the look and just from prejudice, I kind of assumed that it would have a Marvel look to it or something when I was reading it. I
Yeah,
don't know why, but yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
I kind of expected it to be yeah like a super stylized like when they do like Marvel Knights or something, when they do the ones that are more violent and maybe allow a couple curse words, but
Yeah.
it's still like even though it's bleak colors, it's like super colorful and like over the top. But yeah, it's really basic and simple. Which yeah, you're right. I bet you it helps with some of the different subject matter to keep it kind of a little lighter and fun.
Yeah, because the comic is black and white, and by that we mean it's line art. It doesn't have any shading or anything. It's not really. It is literally black and white with no shades of gray, um, and it's really interesting and kind of quick read. Um, I guess it's kind of hard. I am going to suggest. We've never done this before, but I suggest a two-tiered spoiler section where we get into the details of the show, but we give you a little warning before we talk about specifically the last episode, just because I feel a lot of it, if you've listened this far, it wouldn't really hurt you if you heard us talking about episode 2 or 3 or whatever. But like, let's give a little. We'll mention it before we get into the very ending. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you don't want to know anything, we're going to
Yeah.
talk about the first few episodes here, and then we'll give you even more of a spoiler warning when we start to get into the nitty gritty of the ending. That's what you're saying, right?
That's what I'm saying. And as we said, it's only a few episodes. You can watch it in an evening, and you should
Yes.
because it's very good. And it's you had a good point. It is a very bingeable show because some shows, I think sometimes we or people release their shows entirely, like maybe Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, even though it really would have worked episode to episode. And in this one, you're right. I think they made a good move of releasing the first one, well, airing the first one and then releasing all of them because Not to say it's like enhanced, but it works really well. And by the time you finish one episode, you're gonna want to see the next, and before you know it, it's gonna be over.
Exactly. Agreed.
So
So, starting with the slight spoilers before we get into the real spoilers.
yeah,
When we say
there's
slight, we mean like the first few episodes.
yeah. So do you want to go through kind of what you? Well, let's talk more freely with less of gags in our mouths. What do you think?
Like again, like I did like the trailer, and it's one of those where I saw it as like a sponsored Facebook ad. And it's like
Oh,
one of the
really?
few times that's ever worked well in my favor where
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And when I saw the trailer, I thought it was just a movie that Netflix was putting out. And like we've been saying, it kind of essentially is. It's just split up in episodes. And I could totally see how it would be something that would put people off, but I was like, I'm interested. I want to check this out. And yeah, we start out. It's kind of basically what the trailer lays out. And like you had mentioned, we have both the main characters, Alyssa and James, are like narrators at different points. And it's great because with James, he's talking about how he's a psychopath and he mentions the animals he killed, but you still have this sense of like, is he just a dramatic teenager? Like, is he just like a lonely kid who has nothing else going for him? And he's just kind of like, what's cool about me? Oh, I'm a psychopath. But it adds that edge because then we meet Alyssa and like you said, her first thing is how she's rebelling against her phone. She smashes her phone and she's on the search for something different, something unique, and that's when our two main characters collide, Alyssa and James.
Yeah, and that tension of like not knowing how off the deep end he is, and like what I was talking about with you kind of know where the story's going to go. It's like, well, he's a self-diagnosed psychopath. He decides who his victim is and gets like he starts getting to know her in order to be able to murder her. And obviously the suspicion is that they're going to learn to love and everything, and that's kind of what happens, but not in a cheesy way, just in a really well put together dark and comedic way.
Yes, yeah, it's kind of like I don't know if a movie told me this or a real thing told me this, but you know, you see it in movies for sure when someone has a gun on you or they're threatening to kill you. It's like, my name is Jim Scampoli. I have a brother. I have a girlfriend. I have 3 pets. Like when you start to learn about someone, even if you're a psychopath, maybe it makes it a little harder. Or like if you live on a farm, you can't have your kids name the chicken that you're going to murder
Yeah.
because like, nope, you named it. Like now you can't go there. But yeah, it's such a great driving point because you start to think like James is going to be this main character, like, and the will he, won't he is more about him killing her. But Alyssa is such an interesting character as well because she is this free spirit that's kind of, she's obnoxious because she's a teenager, but then also you get why the way she is when you start learning about her home life and how her mom, you know, has this new husband and this new family.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that she wants to think of her daughter from her previous marriage as less than, but it's like it's happening. It's just, you know, that's still happening.
The stepdad or whatever that she has is the worst, but her mother as well, like seeing all the terrible shit that he's saying, and he's not even like he's not a cartoonish monster. He's just a bad guy in such a makes you fucking feel sick kind of way.
Yep.
Because you know we also have another character who's a weird murdering rapist, but because like that person is not in your home undermining who you are, like it doesn't feel as bad almost as the character who tells her to run away because hey, who would care anyway? And then you see that your mother saw him saying that and she doesn't say anything, and you're like, well, fuck this. And like when she's looking back on it later, she's like, you don't really know what's a beginning and what's an ending, and like that was an ending, and she didn't know it when she went away, and I didn't know that it was a road trip, like because you didn't give that in your pitch. So at the end when they drive away, I'm like, holy shit, because I thought the show might be like, oh, we're in this town and we're the weird people in this town, because that's very John Green, and I thought that was the direction it was going to be going. But no, you get a lot of shit out of the way really quickly. Like I pretended to fall in love with her or whatever, and then they're just making out in like an edit, and then it's like, yeah, they leave by the end of the first episode, and still I was kind of suspecting that it would be like fun road trip, but it's like, no, it's the south of England. Like everyone, you're not going to disappear.
Yeah, yeah, and then even then, it's like, yeah, because at the end of the first episode, he punches his dad and they steal his car. But then in the second episode, they crash the car. So
Yeah.
it's like, all right, well now we don't have the car. Like now where are we off to?
Yeah.
Um, and then we meet James's dad as well, and like James wants to punch him, and but in a way it's not because he's as villainous as like Alyssa's stepfather. It's just that he's kind of pathetic,
Yes. Yes.
and we don't really know why. But then he's also like, there was a great scene when like the dad comes home and James has Alyssa over, and he's just pathetic and kind of dumb. So he's saying stuff that he thinks is good, like, "Oh, I always thought he was gay." Like, I don't know, but I don't feel like he's a malicious person.
No, not at
I
all.
get
He seems he seems kind of
kind
all
of all
right,
right.
more
yes,
or less.
and even though what he's saying is kind of like what a shitty person would say, but like it's written so well, and that actor is really like getting it across that you're like, he's harmless, but you also kind of understand like why James doesn't respect him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of hear an echo of me. You don't have anything turned up, right? No, I don't think so. It's gone. Okay, that was weird.
All right, sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
So moving forward, yeah, it's kind of like they crash the car and then they go and play laser tag, and they're kind of like, do we go back now? Like, what do we do? And we don't know how it's going to go and escalate, but of course it starts escalating firstly with the weirdo in the car, who's going to buy a fighting dog, who seems all right at first.
Yes, yeah, they handle this really well. Well, and plus before this, they keep dodging, because in the first episode, right, is when she's like, "I want you to go down on me tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna come over and you go down on me." They keep through these first few episodes, they successfully figure out ways to kind of have like an uncomfortable sexual situation come up
Yeah.
between James and Alyssa, but they are able to sideline it in like a natural way. And again, like that's the reason why they crash, right? Isn't it like they're gonna have sex while driving, or she's gonna go down on him or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Because it's like, have you ever eaten a pussy before? And he's like, in an inner monologue that's like, it was important to remain calm in these situations or something. And he's like, yes. Lots of times.
So then, yeah, they get out of it because they crash the car, and now they're hitchhiking, and they do a good job because as the audience, we already think this is a bad idea, and she's even saying it's a bad idea. Plus, he's hitchhiking with his shirt off, so it seems like everything's kind of in place for things to go badly. But then when they get picked up, they do a good job of, we start to maybe like this guy, and like, oh no, he's not a weirdo. He's just going to get a dog and being nice and maybe trying to help these kids because he knows they're like probably running away from something. Maybe you can, help them out a little bit. And Alyssa seems like she's being the shitty one because, she's just calling him a weirdo and making comments and, being Alyssa. But then, of course, we get to the point where they're in the bathroom at the urinal or the urinal trough or whatever they're at. And, of course, the guy is a creepy weirdo and wants to put James's hand on his dick and, like, snug up on his neck. And it's like, all right, yeah, of course. We were right in the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, he does say, I think, that he's going to get a fighting dog to, fight and kill other dogs. But at the same time, this is the person who picked you up and is actually being kind to you.
Mhm.
And the question is like, why is this person being so all right? But for James, it's like, you were in the army, huh? Tell me more about how many people you killed and everything, because he's still like claiming to us, the viewers, that he's obviously gonna kill Alyssa, as he keeps doing for a lot of the show. And then they rob him.
Yeah, they use it as good opportunity. And well, someone in the chat, actually, Daewoo in the chat, the dude was creepy from the jump. I do agree with that. I guess what I'm saying is more that like I kind of liked how he was playing the character, where I was, it was one of those like, don't be a weirdo, don't be a weirdo. But knowing the show, it's the second episode. It's not like this guy's going to be along for the ride. So I kind of knew he was going to be a weirdo, but it was just, I thought they did a good enough job where I was like, of course that happened.
Yes. So they use the money to go to a hotel room where he again is like waiting with his knife at the door, and she's like, because of the sexual stuff tension from before, and then like her unsure now, she's now unsure if like, do you just go along with things or do you actually want me? And obviously everything else shitty going on. She tries to call home, and the stepfather Tony answers and doesn't like, says that her mother doesn't want to speak to her or whatever. So she's in the bathroom crying, and he goes to cut her up, and then hears that she's crying and doesn't do it.
Yeah, and so they just sit with the porn on because they put some porno on,
Yeah.
and then I think he has that moment where he's like, "Can we turn this off now?" Yeah. Okay.
And they make the plan to go and see her father, which is like the main bit of the road trip for the rest of the few episodes.
Yeah, because that's right. Because even though her father left her, he's been sending her birthday cards every birthday. And I mean, we're all a sophisticated audience. We can kind of maybe glean some details from here, but we also don't blame Alyssa for wanting to hold on to that hope. You know what I mean? Like, especially like we've already talked about with her own home life and dealing with her stepdad. Because not only is he being shitty to her just about being kind of the odd person out in the family because she's like the remnant of the previous marriage, but he's also creepy, like the way he touches her and like ogles her and stuff like that. So you have to think that there's something better out there for you. There's some sort of family that you belong in.
Yeah, but she's worried, and that is why they go to buy train tickets, and she's like, "No, we need to lay low. We need to do something else," because she's worried. So they instead break into a house where I'm sure nothing bad will happen and nothing will go down. They kind of hang out and have a they make themselves at home, as it were, and
Yeah.
she tries to blow him, and the picture of the author who lives there puts him off, and she's angry about that. So she goes and finds some other guy, and also angry in general just about how fucking weird he is and not knowing where they're at or what's going on. So she just goes and finds a guy. So even though James is, I mean, he's starting to turn around at this point, obviously, because he, instead of getting a knife, he gets a flower to give to her to like apologize. But she shows up with Topher, who this guy is who she meets while just walking around this neighborhood, which when you think about what happens next is like, you like, I know you didn't plan to kill anyone, but this it's like the worst way to do it still. Like, even not planning to kill people, I don't just break into a house and then I'm like, come on over, here's my face, look at
Yep.
us, because you obviously live in this neighborhood or close or whatever. So here, let's get some witnesses up in here.
Yeah. Here's someone that knows what we've been up to. And then the thing is, I wasn't sure. I mean, seeing, because they make a comment about how his house looks weird, and to me, at first, I'm like, I think that house looks weird, but is it just because I don't live in England and that's just how houses look? Because even this house also looks weird, but to me, I'm like, that's just how they do it. That's part of the charm.
Yeah, I thought it would come back in some way about his house, where they're like, "Oh, this house," and they're like, "Yeah." I guess I thought his mother would be an architect or something like that. I don't know.
And then, but like backing up a little bit, I do like the moment they have where she's like dancing and just kind of being herself, even though like it kind of just shows because they're both goofy dancers, but it's like a nice moment where they're kind of comfortable with each other, where
Yeah.
it's, they can do that. And then, like you said, then it goes into like the oral sex scene, but he can't shake the picture of the homeowner, and then probably just in general, since he's a little kind of like of a weirdo kid. And then she brings home this other bloke, if you will, to kind of make him, like, get him back in a way. Like, it's clearly all about her own rejection and kind of getting revenge. And it's such a sweet moment where he has the flower and he's there at the door trying to make amends, and she just brings in another guy to go upstairs and have sex.
Yeah. But she backs out because she has a line of like, sex can go from something you really want to a punishment in just seconds, and tells him to leave, tells him to go away, and he does. Um, now more of a problem, I think. Well, not a problem for them, but here now he's gonna try to kill her now for real this time. Okay, now we're serious. She's definitely gonna die this time.
Mhm.
But now he realizes that he's actually falling in love with her for real. He can't do it. Timing is a good thing for these kids because this is where the murderer shows up. Because yeah, he did find the box of victims, the victim
Yes.
box.
Yeah, and they hint at it a little bit because when he gets the flower, the camera hangs for a moment in like the cupboard or the closet or whatever we're in, and it's
Yeah.
just like a lot of duct tape and just kind of weird shit. And then yeah,
Yes.
James finds a box of Polaroids and a camcorder, and yeah, like how coincidental. Here I am, a self-diagnosed psychopath, and we break into this home, and oh, lo and behold, could this be another psychopath? Maybe I could relate to a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good. They do a good job of like it. Almost feels like he could have become the Padawan or something. But instead, this guy is all getting up on Alyssa, so he stabs him in the neck. Good scene,
Yeah.
good and fucked up scene. There's blood everywhere. Dark comedy indeed.
Yeah, and it's before that there is like a tender moment where he like lays on the floor when she's sleeping, and yeah, we see that he's got these budding feelings for Alyssa. But yes, the homeowner arrives home. He goes under the bed, and the guy who now we now know is like a killer rapist dude. Like he's like, oh, so anyone else know you're here? Broke into my house, hey? And it's like a perfect opportunity for him to it's like if you were a killer rapist and then you came home and some young girl was in your bed, it's like what's more perfect than this?
Yeah. Oh, runaway, huh?
Yeah.
Bet you didn't tell anyone where you were going. So you smashed your phone, you say. Yeah, also Double Bet in the chat said don't forget about the flashes he has about killing her. And that is like part of the style choices that
Yes.
they're always like going in your brain, flashing this and that. And I mean we talk about voiceover sometimes and they do it pretty well here because the voiceover never feels like distraction. It always feels like it adds something. It's always showing the contrast, more or less, of what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And then suddenly, when they're thinking and saying the same thing, then that hits really hard. So and it's mostly used for comedic effect in a good way as well. So well
Yeah.
done.
Yep. And then yeah, then he finally does get his first murder. Which I mean, it is in self-defense because he saves Alyssa from this murderer rapist, stabs him in the neck, and yeah, in a grisly scene, he bleeds out everywhere. There's blood everywhere, and here we go. Welcome to the show, episode 3.
Yeah, that is, yeah, we're not even like halfway through. That's episode 3, as you said. And I was like, okay, I haven't even, I've watched this for like less than an hour, kind of, and we're already at this point. Um, but yeah, so as we move on in the next few episodes, it's obviously more about getting away with it first off, because they try to move, they can't even move the body because it's too heavy, so instead they just sprinkle these cards or these pictures everywhere and um like kind of wash away the evidence of them being there, but obviously there's like tons of evidence of them being there, so it doesn't really work out.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a wedge driven between them because he just murdered someone, and Alyssa's like, "Yeah, edgy. I wanted someone who was edgy, not this is a bit too sharp of an edge, if you know what I mean." So she's freaking out and kind of runs away in a restaurant, in a diner there, and it's it's really nice when he realizes. I mean, it's a good line. It's directly from the comic when he's like realizes that. He wasn't the one. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe that's later. He wasn't the one protecting. No, that's later. But he realizes he's not a psychopath. Like we're at that point already here.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it's much later what you're saying, but yeah, because he says what I wasn't protecting her, she was protecting me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good line.
and then we meet the two. They're called DCs. What's that? Is it just detective?
Detective constables.
Ah, detective constables. I don't know what the constable is.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm like, where do I know that lady from? And then clearly she's from Game of Thrones. What an idiot! It took me like a long time to realize that.
I didn't even realize it until afterwards,
Oh,
until
for
after
real?
I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, Yara
Uh,
Greyjoy.
hmm
And they have some fun back and forth because it's like there's some sexual tension there, and they keep referencing like, oh, the other night, oh, that thing we had together the other night. What's Terry is one of them, and the other name is Uni.
Eunice. Eunice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's fun, and they're kind of on the case. They got this. They found this man stabbed in the neck, but of course, the guy, it's his mom that finds the body. So of course, she takes the pictures, she burns them.
Yeah.
So the police don't find that aspect of it, that angle. They just find a man who was stabbed in his home, and like evidence is missing because they kind of cleaned up the blood and they took the sheets and all that and just burned them.
Yeah.
So some crime was afoot.
Yes, and these two police DCs are great. I obviously like them immediately. It's weird to see a Greyjoy like smiling and awkward and trying to give you a coffee and she's like, this is a crime scene. And she's like standing there with two coffees, and just the contrast between them. And obviously I ship it before it's canon even, because they just have this nice goofy banter. And then yes, of course, it goes there. I like it. It should. Like, these characters are not in the comic, by the way, at all,
Oh,
so that's kind of interesting.
interesting. Yeah, they nailed like what they were going for. They nailed it. You're right. You like these characters immediately, and even though they're kind of chasing down our heroes of the story here, we're still with them and rooting for them.
Yes. So there's one thing here where where James pays some people to beat him up, and then goes to the police. And I thought there was a plan. I thought that was part of a plan, but it wasn't, I guess.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot that. Yeah, he had those people beat him up. Is that just he felt he needed to be punished? Basically, it kind of plays into like turning himself in.
I mean, I guess, but I really thought he was getting beat up so he could call and say that he's reporting a murder. He had broken in and then someone came and beat him up and killed the guy. That's what obviously that's not a great plan either, but I thought there was some plan because when he's there, like in the police station, we see another police officer who's not in like the rest of the show, and he's kind of like awkwardly trying to deal with this teenager who's talking about like, he's reporting a murder, huh? And tells him about his mother who died like 10 years ago or whatever. And he's like, right, it's not technically murder. Um, and I mean, it's kind of fun, but I was a bit confused where he was at that point in the story.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I could really think here is because I thought he was for sure just going in to turn himself in,
Mm-hmm.
and in a weird way that also protects Alyssa because he was just going to put himself like throw himself down on his sword, if you will, and maybe the beating just tied into that, like because her thing is that she's creeped out about the murder, but she's creeped out that he had a knife and that he's kind of not reacting to it.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, it does feel even this to me, even though I love this show, like her like leaving him here, it still does feel more like a show thing because at the end of the day, he still saved her. I do understand her reaction, but it does feel like a kind of a plot thing where they have to be separate for a little while because
Yeah.
I do understand reacting to like, oh, you killed someone, but also it's like, well, yeah, but it was the most excusable murder ever.
Yes, and it is. This is also a difference from the comic, where in the comic they're in the bed and someone's coming home, and he's kind of like do you trust me? And she, because she's like, we got to get out of here. And she's like, do you trust me? Like, oh, this is after they have sex in the bed in the comic, by the way. But he's like, do you trust me? Okay. And then he plans the murder in the moment and then he shows her the pictures of the thing. And I like the twist they did it here in the show, where it's way more understandable how it pans out and he's way more likable. But that also, I think that's why it suffers afterwards, because in the comic as well they split up. But in the comic it's because he decided, instead of trying to run, to kill this guy. And here it's like, well, you didn't, like, he could have not killed him, I guess, but they were still in his house and everything, and he was a rapist murderer. So you're right. I think that's probably what pushes it in that direction.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense. I kind of get it, because I'm sure they're just very concerned. Like, if it did play out like the comic, people are not going to be rooting for James as much. But yeah, it is a weird, because then the reaction is if the events of the comic happened in a way. It still works. It's one of the things that's a little bit more flimsy than some of the rest of the stuff. It still makes sense, but it does come off as like, well, what are you doing? Like, if he saved you, like, you completely get why he would have done what he did.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really react to it, probably because in the end, they get back together. But I mean, you're right. It's more of a, like, it's typical show movement. You can feel the movement of it, but because they end up together after just a little while, I had more problems on the James side of him going to the cops and then running away, because his motivation to go to the cops, I guess I misinterpreted. And then it was like, okay, and now he decided not to do that. And I was like, oh, so there was no plan. There was nothing. He was just freaking out, I guess. But yeah, she also has a run-in with the security guard, which worked out pretty well. I mean, as well, I liked the comic, but the way they do it here is more elegant, because she in the comic is kind of caught by a security guard under similar circumstances, but just kind of, the security guard sees she's in a bad spot and probably a runaway, and tells her to go, and like gives her some advice and stuff. And here it's like, I liked how it plays out, where she sees this kid who's clearly lost and has to decide whether to go back or not. And because she goes back, she gets the reward, kind of. She does the right thing, and it makes her more likable too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like how they played this out, because yeah, she has an opportunity to escape because she's shoplifting, underwear, because she had her period. And as she's walking out, she overhears the reason why the security guard's distracted is because a man, he can't find his daughter and he needs help. And then on her way through the alley, she sees there's the little girl, is clearly the daughter. And it's like, okay, do I save myself here? They'll probably find her. Nothing bad probably won't happen. Or, I'll sacrifice myself for the right thing. So yeah, it really tells you a lot about Alyssa, and it does make her much more likable. And then she still gets the reward, because the security guard's like, here's some food, get out of here. You're a good kid, clearly.
Yes. And they get back together and on the road. This is in the next episode, but they kind of hotwire a car, and now they're starting to feel more like, yeah, we're a crime road trip. We're like, he's coming out of his shell because she came back to him, and everything. And they rob a petrol station in a kind of hilarious way.
Let me back up a little bit. Well, I mean, I know we kind of talked about his mom, but are we saying that this is more of a spoiler to get into the, I don't know if we get into like the specifics. It's like
I think it's fine. I'm only just wanting to hold off on the very end.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, what's the first thing he says in the first episode? Is that she's just traveling or something, right?
He tells Alyssa that she is in Japan.
Yes. And then we find out that she died. And then now we find out that she committed suicide, but not only that, she kind of did it right in front of him. I like how they kind of play it out, because it tells us a lot, obviously, about James, but it also tells us a lot about his dad as well, because we see the scene beforehand where he's like, she's clearly depressed and has something going on, but from someone on the outside, he just says, oh, but come on, you could go feed the ducks or whatever. That's a good thing. And like they all feel at fault because she
Yeah.
takes him out, and then as James is, young 6-year-old James is just like feeding the ducks or just by the lake, she drives her car in and just drowns right in front of him. And yeah, like clearly that's going to affect and fuck people up big time.
Yeah.
And on a side note, I love it's such a simple, almost dumb thing, but I love that when James leaves the police station, he goes back to the restaurant that he was at and like sits down where she left him, and
Yeah.
then she comes back and they meet back in that spot. And like I mentioned this on Twitter, so many of these shots I could totally see using like if I was this type of person, I'd have so many Tumblr gifs and reactions of this couple. Like I want to go and be that angsty teenager that watches this show and plasters these gifs all over my social media to show what a deep kid I am,
Just looking for a guy who will wait like for me, like James or
Yeah,
something. Leave for 2 days,
exactly.
he's still there. Like
Uh,
fucking Fry's dog.
but then, yeah, back to what you're saying. Yeah, then they steal this car. They're kind of feeling their immortality again. They're powerful Bonnie and Clyde, and they decide to go get some gas in their hot wired car, and a hilarious robbery ensues.
What did you think of the robbery? Was it actually hilarious to you?
It was, what was the guy's name? Frodo? Like, isn't
Yeah.
the guy that works at the gas station Frodo? And it's great because we're introduced to Frodo and his boss, which it's not his mom, right?
I
Just,
thought so. I think it
okay.
is.
They do play it like that. Like it's kind of maybe like a family owned thing, but she's kind of nagging him a little bit about like dumb stuff, or what is it they sell? It's like an air
Oh
freshener.
no, it's like a button, like for cancer or something.
Yes, yeah, and it's like, did you recommend the button? It's like, oh, should hope people don't get cancer then.
Or
Uh,
no, specifically, she's like, yeah, well, when you get cancer, don't come complaining to me.
and yeah, so then what? They're kind of acting weird anyways because they pull up wrong, like the wrong side
Yeah,
of the gas station,
which
which is fine.
which you would do as well if you were in the UK.
Yeah, yeah,
I would too.
and then they're kind of just being a little suspicious, and they also don't have money because what the plan is, they're just gonna like gas up and drive away, right?
Yeah, but she is such a hard ass, as we already saw from her line about the fucking buttons, that she goes out there and to her, it's like, oh, these teens, like they represent an issue in society to her. You can just tell. And she's not going to let them get away with nothing. Call the police, Frodo, she says 100 times. And she's kind of blocking everything. And when she puts the pump back in, Alyssa, she's like standing right behind her when she turns around and more or less drags her inside. And Alyssa's just going along with it and doesn't have a plan all the way, and like is trying to think of something, trying to go to the bathroom, and she actually like, no, you're not going to the bathroom, and like a scuffle ensues. And I really love how Frodo is just like doing nothing, and he's kind of like, my life is disrupted, this is great.
Yeah, she's yelling at him to call the police, but yeah, to him, it's just an exciting moment because to break up the monotony of working at your mom's gas station and being like just belittled, like not belittled, but just picked at all day long. It's like, here's some excitement. And then what, James runs in kind of with his like pretending he has a gun, like he's got his jacket pocket up, like, let her go or I'm gonna shoot you. And the mom kind of sees through this. But then is this when Frodo comes in for the save?
No, because I think they just end up, does he save them at any point? Yeah, I don't think he does.
He kind of comes in with the save because he like, doesn't he just help lock her in or something like that? I forget exactly.
I guess it's probably afterwards because he doesn't help her get out is the
That's what.
thing.
Yeah, it's more or less that then.
Yeah, and he like they're telling him like, oh, or he's saying how great it is, and they're like, yeah, if you don't like your life, do something. And he like tips over the bowl, and he like looks at them all smiling, and it's really great how he obviously starts tearing the place up, and they're like, we gotta get out of here, and he's like, yeah, we should get out of here, we should go.
Yeah, because it's like he thinks he's part of the crew now.
Yeah, obviously. This also is not in the comic, but it makes so much sense because everything's been really bleak, and it's about to get bleak, and like everything is like this is the part where you actually where they get a taste of what they wanted, I feel, through their adventure. Like obviously they get some at other points, but here it's like they get to succeed at something, which is nice for them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's a nice way to kind of fight back at authority, like like especially not just these particular angsty teens, but every angsty teen, even Frodo. It's like this weird, like this is who I am, this is my identity, and fuck everyone, and then this is us fighting back.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it shows how everyone really wants to do that.
yes, yeah. And then the detectives, I guess at this point they've found the knife because in a kind of a dumb movie, drops it in the pool filter
Yeah.
and find it, and they make the connection that it's James's knife. And
And
do they also?
they already interviewed Topher and got kind of their names or her name and kind of started
Yes, 'cause
piecing
son
it
is
together
Paul.
anyway.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Um, and it's there's a good moments too with James's dad where, like, even in the beginning where James is like, he's not going to call the police. I know he won't. And partly in the beginning, I just thought because he's like pathetic, but then it's just like, I don't know, he really loves his son, and he doesn't report the car stolen, or he doesn't say that because he just wants him to be okay, and he thinks he'll just come back.
Yeah.
And he's even kind of surprised. Well, he got him the knife, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
like the thing that they get it through? Like, got him for as like a hunting knife.
Hmm.
Um,
So
and
he kind of wants like even when they're talking to him, he's trying to downplay everything. And I'm not sure exactly when, but they have the I guess they're showing the security footage, right?
yes,
Um to both of their sets of parents, or well, to the father and mother, and Tony, fucking Tony. And and yeah, he's still not kind of believing it, more or
yeah.
less.
And at this point, is it this episode or the next episode where they start to get a clear idea of is it Clive who they murdered? Yeah, Clive. They start to get an idea of his past because the mom finally does just come forward with the.
Yeah, yeah. First, they talk to the mother and kind of bring up these sexual assault cases because they're trying to figure out who might want to hurt him. And we get to see the contrast between these two because we've already obviously seen that. Oh shit! Which of these detectives is which? What are their names again?
Yara is Eunice,
Yeah. So Eunice is
Harry's
obviously
detective.
Yeah. So Eunice is obviously not good at the actual police stuff. You know, she brings the coffee, she's kind of goofy, and the other one, Moon, what's her face?
Terry.
Terry's really good at all of that, but she's cold. She doesn't have a good touch with people, and she actually manages Eunice to talk to her and say, "Hey, it's better to be in front of these things. Like, trust me, I've seen a lot of this, and if you know something, it is going to get out. So at least it could be on your terms." But like her buddy cop would never have thought of that, or like it would have done it in such a cold way that you just feel insulted. But because she has this sympathy, which is also a big part of her character, she is able to get that information, and the mother comes in with the videotape. Because first she tells her to fuck off, but then she thinks about it and she comes in with the videotape.
And then she has to interrupt. She's on like a blind date.
Oh yeah.
And just kind of awkwardly come in because it's important break in the case. But then again, since she is kind of, I guess, bad cop in this good cop bad cop situation. Not that she's bad at her job, but like you said, a little bit more cold. It's still kind of like, well, this doesn't change anything. They still murdered this man. Whereas Eunice is like giving them the benefit of the doubt of, why would these kids who, yeah, they're rebellious kids, but why would they murder someone?
Yes. So at the end of this one, they've finally reached their destination. And I remind you, England is not a big country. They probably didn't go very far overall. I guess they did say how far it was, but but just generally, like when you're in England, people really act like it's big because there's a lot of people everywhere. Like the population's quite big, and yet you have the countryside and stuff. But it's like people when they describe how you're gonna go somewhere, drive somewhere. It's such a crazy convoluted thing of no, you got to take this road and that road, and it'll take an eternity, and blah blah blah. And then like, oh yeah, if you're in the U.S., you just drive further than that to get a taco and back, and that's like a different town. When you or Sweden, even if comparing it, like if you take a ruler on the map and you put it on Sweden, it's like, oh yeah, I go that distance to go to work, and it's like 5 towns over for you because it's the UK. So anyway, that's just a small detail about how
I like that
they're
because I didn't even think of that. But yeah, you're right. What it's in the end, like since they were kind of putting it off a bit, what they just drove like 2 or 3 hours away or something like that.
I'm not sure because they do say at some point that they robbed a place that's this far away, and I don't remember what they said exactly, but it's impossible that it's very far. Um, but it's also interesting because the south of England they build up, like I was talking about how it feels kind of mythic in a way, and even though there's a lot of people in England, it feels like a forgotten place they come to. It feels similar. I think maybe all countries have this, but it feels similar to the American South or
Yeah.
the Swedish North. They had like obviously the trailer helps this impression where her dad lives in this trailer. And now we're getting into episode 7.
Yeah, he just lives in a trailer kind of in this like on the beach, but you could tell it's like, you know, a shitty part of the beach where kind of no one cares. Like he probably just brought his trailer and like dropped it somewhere and everyone's like, yeah, who cares? We ain't gonna put anything there anyways. And yeah, so we meet her dad, Leslie, finally. And even though Alyssa through this whole show has been one to call people on their shit like all the time and not worried about doing that, she just turns into a regular girl. It's her dad, and she maybe doesn't pick up on some of the details that James does as an outsider point of view without having that, you know, this is your father, you want them to be great and you want to be finally be the place you can call home. So it was interesting to see that because, you know, she's calling everyone out all the time. You know, she don't care. She's a strong, independent woman,
Yeah.
but you know, every girl wants to have their dad be a hero.
Yeah, and she even says in a voiceover that, I mean, there's a reason she didn't go directly there. She kind of thought it would be shit. And then, at first at least, she thinks, this is not shit at all. This is exactly what I wanted because he's hugging me, he's telling me how much he loves me and everything. And it's only later that the details kind of start to feel a bit shitty. Like, she doesn't even care that he's selling drugs to kids. They're going to get it from
Yeah,
someone.
forget it.
And James is over there like, okay, let's go throw knives, I guess.
Yeah, he brings them to throw knives, but it's like, how can he be a bad guy? He has a boat, and they're gonna go on the wall. They're gonna go on the boat sooner or later, right? So of
Yeah,
course,
because he said we would, so that's a promise. I'm sure he'll keep it. But James has a good description. I think it's James saying it that he's like not a bad guy, but it just seems like he's got parts missing.
Mm.
Um, and they make like I believe in this character, and then they go to the True Blood bar, uh, from True Blood.
Yeah, they go to shit. I can't think of the bar name right now.
Yeah. They go there anyway to drink alcohol with underage people, as you do, and then his girlfriend shows up because the cops are sniffing around, and I do like that the girl who is the father of Leslie's son, which is a bit of a stab in the chest for Alyssa, that
Yeah,
she's like, she's not gonna talk to the cops. Like, she might hate him, but she's not gonna go talking to the cops.
yeah, because it's the ex-girlfriend. They first show up where Alyssa thinks her dad is, and yeah, she answers, and she's just annoyed. Here's someone else here asking about Leslie. And I mean, it's just some kids. I guess you can assume that that's his daughter if you ever mentioned his daughter, but you can also completely see a world where Leslie never mentioned to his ex-girlfriend Debbie that he had a daughter in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, she tells them where he's at, like, oh, he's in a trailer, that piece of shit. Like, and you can assume it's because he's a piece of shit. She had to kick him out and he had to go live on his shitty trailer. But you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Then when the detectives show up, though, yeah, she's not going to help the detectives, even though she doesn't know who these kids are. She's not going to rat them out, but she's going to go show up and give Leslie what for
Yeah,
because
and I
neglecting his son.
yes, I know I talk about like differences to the comic a lot, but I feel like the comic is so short that if you filmed it, it would be like a regular length movie. It wouldn't be like oh however long it is when you add this up 3 hours or whatever, because. When they arrive in the comic, the ex girlfriend of Leslie's is like, "Oh, are you the new whore? I'm the old whore." Like, and she's only in like 2 frames or whatever, but here she's an actual character who has some weight to it. Oh, and in the comic she just says, "Tell Leslie like his son misses him or something." And here they actually like, I don't know, they pace it out really well for this length, and they manage to make like turn the information into like bullets hitting our main characters and propel them into the actions they want them to take, because everything is, even I like the comic, but everything is a bit more flat. It feels very much more alive in here because everyone is a character.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. A lot of smart choices with the reveals, and yeah, especially the reveal here where um it's finally it's chipping away at Alyssa's image of her dad, because it's around when she also finds out, or does she find out? She asks him about the letters and he does that thing of like, oh yeah, because he's like, oh, I ain't shit. Man, I can't believe it. I left you. And
Yeah,
she,
I think
no,
that's the final thing before before she stabs him in the hand or something. Maybe I'm not 100%. I think it might be later that she figures
well,
out the
I just
letters.
mean, yeah, I don't think she figures it out here yet, but it's when she brings them up and she says, like, of course you're shit. And she shows him one of the cards. And then he's like, oh, yes, the cards. Like, it comes
Yeah,
up later that he didn't send him, but I think this is where she brings it up in the bar when they're dancing or what have you. And
yeah.
then the ex-girlfriend shows up, and then it chips away a little bit at the image because she finds out he's kind of got another family and he's just doing his same old shit that he did to her.
Yeah, and
And
I mean to top it off, he runs over
yes,
a dog.
yeah, really nail it home for us, the audience. There's a dog just decided to sleep next to his wheel.
Yeah.
And you could almost forgive it because if he didn't look, but still, like, it's clear he ran something over and he just speeds away. He doesn't give a shit. He just killed a dog, or they have to kill the dog, basically.
Yeah, and James can't even do it. He's killed a lot of animals before, but now he can't even like take a rock and put it out of its misery, showing where he's at this point. He's become like he obviously we get now he's extremely traumatized by what happened with his mother, and kind of like as you mentioned, they're all able to blame themselves because he was like, "Oh, please, let's go see the ducks." And she was like, "No, not today," because she knew if she goes to see the fucking ducks, she's gonna drive into the
Yeah.
river. And he's like, "Please." And his dad is also saying the same. So obviously he's majorly messed up from that. And now he can't even kill a dog.
Yeah, yeah, he can't even do it. Well, because I mean, we're about to get into episode 8, so should we
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
for
let's
now? This is real spoilers. Like,
yeah.
even though we kind of spoiled all the other episodes, that's still like, hey, you could it's an enjoyable little romp to go
Yeah.
through. But now we're
Let's
getting into the nitty gritty of the ending, so we would recommend watching it before you hear any of this discussion.
absolutely full spoilers from here on out. So they bury the dog in the jacket that belongs to her father, which she's had with her all the time, which is proper and very nice and symbolic. Um, and I was almost like, don't bury it with the jacket. There's still more storytelling potential in the jacket. And
Yeah,
that's me not realizing that by the end of this, it's like, I mean, when this episode ends, I'm just like, what? No, that can't be the ending. But then like 5 minutes after that, I'm like, there can never be a season 2 of this. And I don't know what your opinion is. Some people are clamoring for it and so on, but it would make no fucking sense at all.
yeah, yeah. I think I agree. Yeah, I think I'm in your camp. But yeah, does the plan? Well, we do see a shot of Leslie seeing them on the news, and then of course they mention reward, and of course we, the audience, like, oh, here we go. This is the piece of shit guy. He's gonna go for the reward, but it all makes sense from what we know about him.
Yeah,
Um,
and his excuse is that he's the one who did it, but I guess he doesn't know that at the point when he's calling the police. I'm not sure, but he does call
well,
the police on them.
because basically the plan becomes because the running thing that even Alyssa is picking up on, besides him having another child that he's neglecting, but also he keeps talking about how they're going to go on the boat, and she realizes they're never going to go on the boat, even though he promised it. It's just another
Yeah.
broken promise. So their plan becomes they're going to take the boat, and this is how they're going to get to freedom. Like, like they're going to take this piece of shit boat and and like that's gonna fix everything. But even it makes complete sense because they're teenagers. But even as the audience, I'm thinking like, yes,
Get
get
on
on
the
the boat.
boat.
That's all you need, and you
Yeah.
get out of there. You'll get out of like jurisdiction. What they won't extradite you. They won't send you back, and you'll live
Yeah.
together happily ever after.
Sadly, there's this thing. Well, maybe in a few years after Brexit, but right now they would be like you just ship them back under in the fucking tunnel. There's a tunnel under there. Um, but yeah, basically, I obviously all of us are like, yeah, the boat. Duh, Chekhov's boat, and they never get on the boat.
And even
Fuck.
and it's so clear too because it's even like I mean, we're jumping around, but even when you get there, it's not even anywhere near. Well, it's like low tide as well, so it's nowhere near the water. But there's still like, well, maybe
Yeah.
they can get the boat there somehow. Because yeah, the police are kind of moving in, and Leslie, does he makes the phone call while they're kind of having it out
Yeah, he
to
tries to get them to confess basically, and he realizes this and takes the phone and takes the confession on himself and grabs a gun, I guess, and holds it on Leslie.
yes, and then yeah, that like we are saying, this is where Alyssa is fully clear that the birthday cards were never sent from her dad. And even though there's still a lot to hate about the mom because she's trying to be ignorant of the real things that are affecting Alyssa because she doesn't want to mess up her, new perfect life because, obviously they're in a nice house.
Yeah,
They're more of a well-off family. She has a new baby.
great relationship.
Yeah, but at the very least, she was trying to keep Alyssa's hope about her dad alive by going through the trouble of sending those cards. And yeah, I think you said it. She ends up stabbing him in the in the hand or whatever to try to like keep this Bonnie and Clyde game going.
Yes, and he wants moving back a bit, the two cops have their little drama going on where Yara realizes that these kids, man, and the other cop is like they're criminals, they're not children or whatever. So they have the conflict about that, leading her to go there and
Oh,
actually like just
and
kind of knock on the door.
yeah, and they even throw in the fact that like he's gonna turn 18 or what is this his birthday?
Yeah, yeah,
Which it's saying it and even seeing that on paper, that sounds awful. Like it sounds just like such a lazy, lame, like watch Amazing Spider-Man 2 when Electro's like, it's my birthday, and it's so cheesy. But it works. I don't know what your thought is. It weirdly works. And it's also kind of just a weird red herring because maybe you're thinking like, oh no, but maybe if they fudge the numbers a bit, he won't be 18 and they'll still be together.
well, it
Uh,
works because they've managed to build it up to a point where like there's a question of whether you can get back from a certain point. It's the windmill in Back to the Future 3. Once
mhm.
you're past this, you can't go back, and that gives us the hope that they can just stop and it can be okay, because there's a point, I mean, when they're murdering people and everything, it's hard to see that it's all going to be okay, but that's kind of like a golden ticket to get out of it, more or less. Like you're gonna do some time or whatever, but it's not the same, because if you keep doing illegal shit right now, it's gonna count harder than it did before. And the heartbreaking thing is that he's up for it. He wants to give up and turn himself in because he knows it's going to be easier for her that way. But she's the one, after realizing about the birthday cards and everything, that hits her in the face. Or I think she asks like, will we be together if we go in? We're not going to be together, right? And she says, well, and she gets fucking hit in the face, and she drags him out to go to the boat.
Yes,
And that
yeah, yeah. Yara or Eunice, Yara from Game of Thrones, because and you're right because we have all this hope in this moment because she's the one that shows up at the dad's trailer, not the cold like these kids are criminals officer, but the more likable. She kind of understands there may be some extenuating circumstances, so it's kind of a good thing she shows up, and it's another element of hoping that things in the end will be okay. But yeah, no, Alyssa makes the choice that okay, if they're not going to be together, she hits the detective in the face and then pulls James out, and yeah, they're going to run to the boat and sail away to safety. But now, like, basically, backups showing up, all the police between just Yara already getting there and the call for the reward from the father. Everything's coming to this climax. Everything's hitting this moment where it's all or nothing.
and I still thought they would get on the boat, man.
Yeah,
and
totally.
then and then there's no fucking
Oh
water.
yeah, yeah. There's no water. It's low tide, and it's just such like even if there was water, there's that boat didn't work. It's such
Yeah,
a shit boat.
true.
But that's what's so great about this show is if a show can get you to really be like, no, this will work out. We can do this. Like, there's no better, criticism I could say. Like, no, there's no better thing I could say about how well executed it was. That yeah, we're both here rooting for them, and now in kind of another swerve, like very similar to how Alyssa knocked the police officer out. Like he like kind of knocks her down or something, right?
Um,
Or he
yeah.
just takes off basically. Like he's
Oh
because
yeah, yeah, yeah. He turns on her and tells
yeah,
her to say that I kidnapped you or whatever, and then just starts running. And she's like shouting, "What are you doing?" And they're like holding her back from running after her, and he's running like he does at the beginning of the episode. And it doesn't always work when you do a flash forward in the beginning of an episode, but here it really works. And they do this thing where they cut in clips from the whole season when he's running there and he's thinking about what he was and what he has become. And we
mhm,
talked about this in Stranger Things too, how it didn't fucking work.
yep.
And I assume you would probably agree that it works here, right?
I agree. Yeah, no, I think it completely works.
Because it builds to this moment like his transformation has been what brought him to this point. In Stranger Things, she went to Chicago and became an X-Man for a bit, and now she's kind of thinking about that and like kind of thinking about her family or whatever. I mean, spoilers for Stranger Things, not really spoilers, but it doesn't really matter what she sees. And they do flashbacks in Stranger Things to things that people haven't experienced, so whatever.
Well, and the Stranger Things, yeah, because we even talk about it. There's a few times that when Stranger Things did it that played more as a character moment, whereas for the most part when they did it, it was more like they were specifically talking to us, the audience, and
Yeah.
saying, "Remember, this is what she's thinking. This is what she's gone through. Don't you remember?" And it doesn't play as true. It didn't come off as the character was thinking about that. It came off as the writer was like, "Oh no, what if they forgot?"
Yeah.
Whereas with something like this, yes, it's character. We've seen, even though we've seen this journey, it's very feasible this is going through his mind. These are important moments to bring us to this point in the journey.
Yes. And to remind everyone, we really like Stranger Things, okay?
No, we totally, yeah, we really like we love Stranger Things.
Yeah, yeah. But he's running there and he's thinking about what people mean to each other, and he sees all the way from when they were meeting and walking in the woods and killing a guy and dancing and all of it. And I'm just watching it now on a side thing. But then there's a gunshot and it cuts to black.
That's a
By the
black.
way, listen to our podcast, Cut to Black, where we discuss The Sopranos.
Yes, please.
But
Just released our first episode.
yeah, but here they also cut to black. And first question, what do you think happened? I
Well,
mean, yeah,
I should say, I mean, clearly they killed him.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the most obvious thing. They are kind of merciful about it because they do cut to black, and that lets you kind of imagine that he could have survived. And like because they wouldn't shoot him in the head if they could help it. They would probably shoot him in the leg or whatever, and you get to imagine that, and then
Yeah.
you get to remember and realize that you're cutting to black because is over this is over. That's why you're cutting to black. And I was saying that, you shouldn't do a season 2, and that's not necessarily because of how it ends. It's because of what it is. And I feel like what it is, the whole show is a depiction of a moment. It's a snapshot of an age that we all go through, and it's a snapshot of frustrations and dealing with things, and it's not going to work if they like fucking are 23 years old or whatever. This is about the end of the fucking world and how everything is so extreme when you're at that age, and how everything can go to 100 in your mind, and how you don't really know who you are, and figuring that out. And that's why if they have a season 2, I mean, I guess they could do it if he's dead and we follow Alyssa or whatever, but it wasn't. That's going to be a completely different story. That's going to be fan fiction, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they can. I'm not 100% against it. Maybe they could make it and it would be good. But I really felt when they were lying on the beach in the beginning of the last episode, and the sun was rising, I think, and they have this conversation. I don't remember exactly what it's about, I guess. Oh yeah, he opens up about his past and everything, and like the connection they have in that moment, and the connection they have throughout the show. That's what it's about. And they can't have him just in fucking crutches in season 2 after that.
Yeah. Well, because that's what they would do. Well, chat's saying there's a gunshot before cutting to black. I mean, I don't know if I'm remembering it wrong, but either way, even if there was, I feel like once the gunshot comes through, it cuts to black, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, maybe it's not this. Well, I did listen. I just watched it, and there is a gunshot exactly when it cuts to black. There might be one before it as well. But I
Okay.
mean, they are, as I said, they're kind of merciful with you.
Yeah.
Like, it's possible to write fan fiction about what happens next, and whether it's the people making a show doing that or people on Wattpad. Either way, it might be good.
Well, and I'm with you. I don't think they need a season 2. I'm not totally against it. If they announce it, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, and I'll check. I'd be interested in checking it out. But it would just be, yeah, it would open and he'd be like in the hospital and have a cast or something, and like they wouldn't go through and have him be dead and have like a just follow Alyssa. I mean, I guess maybe they would, but it more likely it would seem like it'd be like, oh, can you believe they shot me in the butt? Like, and now I gotta walk on crutches.
Here's my question: like, if you do that, when does the story end? Because
Yeah.
this is such a good ending, it encapsulates that that whole moment that the show is.
Yes,
And
and
even
you're
though
right.
sorry to say, ramble on, but I hated it when it happened. Like,
Yeah.
it's not because I loved the ending. It was so abrupt. I was like, "What? 20 minutes went by already?" And usually when I'm watching something like this, I remember to check, like, "Wait, how much time is left? What? How much time? How are they gonna wrap this up?" But here it was just like credits. I was like, "What? No."
Yeah, and I think you completely nailed it, because I mean it's all there, and the title is the end of the fucking world. And given these are extreme situations because there is murder and being on the lam from the law, and someone basically, I mean, one of our main characters basically being shot, depending on your interpretation at the end. But when you're that age, everything feels like this. So it is a great way to encapsulate that, but also have it be, have it live up to the name, basically the end of the fucking world. And that's kind of the hole you put yourself in when you do that, to then be like, but also they keep but also this continuation of the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, I see it more as what great people and characters, or well, the actors, I should say, and the people behind the camera and in front of the camera and writers and everything. What a great job they all did. I'm excited that those people are out there making stuff, and I want to see like the next thing from this director or the next thing with these actors. And by the way, this is a small note, really, but at first, in the first episode, I was like, it's so great that these that UK casts real children, because I was comparing it to Runaways in my mind. Like they all look like they're 25 in Runaways, etc. And then I just, I looked it up and I was like, oh, they're both like 25, I guess. Like, I guess I was wrong, but they're way better at making them look like teenagers because they look so much like teenagers.
Oh, I did
I
not realize that. Yeah, what, Jessica Barden is 26 or she's 25. She's gonna be 26.
yes.
And then yeah, the other dude, I don't see his birthday.
Who we know from Black Mirror, of course.
Yes.
Shut Up and
Yeah, Shut
Dance.
Up and Dance episode of Black Mirror. I'm gonna see what his age is now. I'm compelled to know. Well, he's like 22, but
Yeah.
still.
Yeah. And that was impressive. I don't know how they do it. So I guess in a show like Marvel's Runaways, it's like you're turning these people into like sexy people. And when you sexy someone up, they look older. Like you're intentionally doing that because you want teenagers to have these posters on their wall. And here, you're appealing, I mean, whether you want to or not, you're appealing to the Tumblr GIF crowd, and having a goofy, lumpy sweater is actually going to work better. And having Alyssa in an unflattering t shirt through most of it, like, it's going to work better and make them look the right age, in fact. And obviously, they're really good at acting the age they are supposed to be as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It really is. Yeah. I think the most ideal season 2 is just seeing them make other stuff. I know it's like a weird way to say it, but like, and again, not necessarily with the same people, but yeah, these are actors I'd like to see in more projects. I'd like to see more from this creator. But yeah, it's like again, if they do a season 2, I'm gonna watch it. But yeah, I'd prefer to just let it be because it's really well done. It really nails it, and it's kind of, what else are you gonna say?
It's also because it feels like they actually traveled to the end of the world, like not just emotionally and everything, the end of the line, but when they're there on the beach, they can't go any further than that. They've reached the end, and it looks like it too. It looks like it could be from a post-apocalypse movie, that place. And they can't, I mean, if they do season 2, I guess they could do a US version or whatever just to get a season 2. And then they could do what The Office did and make a US version that ends differently. And then, they could make 6 seasons of that. But it wouldn't be the same because it rarely is.
Agreed. So, I mean, in case you don't get it yet, we loved it.
Yeah. It's a good show. Check it out. It takes about as long as this episode of Shows What You Know to watch the whole fucking series of the end of the fucking world. Now, of course, if you want us to check out one of your favorite shows that is not the end of the fucking world, you can go and leave us a review on iTunes and recommend a show for us to check out. We are contractually obligated to check out and make an episode about any show you recommend up until the end of this month, January 2018. Always catch myself. 2018. So please do leave a review if you have a particular show you want us to get into.
Yes, and if you haven't already, please check out our Sopranos rewatch/watch for the first time, Cut to Black. You'll hear it on the feed, but you can also subscribe to its own feed, which we recommend and appreciate.
Yes, and reviews there are also accepted into the raffle of, it's not a raffle, the list of shows we need to check out. So if you already left one, you get another show in there. You get us to watch another show, just get it in before the end of the month. And of course, at showswhatyouknow.com is where you found all of our coverage of all your favorite shows. Jimandthem.com is where you found more from Jim. And awesomepedia.org is me and all my things. So I guess that about sums it up.
Yep, that's it. We come to the end of the fucking world, guys. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Later.
Wow.